Well, we've seen what leveling up truly means this week, and of course, it has meant exactly nothing, which is what we were telling you from day one. Leveling up was just a vague promise made up by Boris Johnson in an attempt to try and cobble together a coalition of voters to essentially pass his absolutely awful Brexit bill and not even really follow through on the promise to level up. In fact, we have seen most of all this money go to conservative areas, even to places like Rishi Sunak's constituency, which do not need it. They do not need it, full stop. My own hometown of Barnsley is crying out for development, for money to be put into stuff. Barnsley Council has a fantastic program and a plan of action called Barnsley 2030. And all this is being done by the council, by themselves, to help develop Barnsley so that it can have a better future. But in order to be able to really do that, and even better, if the government got behind this plan and turbocharged it by putting the leveling up money, for Barnsley into this project, it could have helped. It could be absolutely fantastic and even replicated elsewhere throughout the country. But it's not. So what happened? Barnsley Council has been left to itself to help sort out this. And what's happened, if you're a resident of Barnsley, you will have noticed there has been a lot of construction going on, not only just in the town centre, but in and around as well, in the local villages as well around Barnsley. That is because they are preparing for Barnsley 2030. They have seen that there is going to be a population expansion. So that's why they're building a lot of new roads. That's why they're building a lot of new bypass. That's why they're building a lot of these new business parks and developments to help to bring in not big, massive companies, but help small companies, help them develop, help them move up to being, more medium-sized companies, to bring more jobs to the area. And they are doing this all by themselves without any money whatsoever. Now, let's be frank because we did actually get some money, but it wasn't from the Leveling Up Fund, from what I know. Barnsley Youth Choir have now managed to obtain their new building behind the town hall. They've got the old courthouse, and they are going to turn that into sort of a what they described it as, like a choir excellence center, where they're going to sort of, that's going to be their home base to sort of help develop, sort of the Barnsley Youth Choir. It's going to be their hub, their center, and they're going to do other things because of Barnsley Youth Choir, there have actually been a couple of other choirs pop up in and around Barnsley as well. So they're going to be able to have access to that as well and use that as rehearsal space and so on. And to be honest, the Barnsley Youth Choir has been doing absolutely fantastic stuff, massively raising the profile of the town so much. I can say that for sure. But what has been the impact? What has been the impact on Barnsley? What has this really done? Well, for that, we're actually going to turn to Steve Houghton and to the Yorkshire Bylines, because they covered some stuff that he was recently on in a podcast about, which I think was sort of is really good to cover. So we're going to go cracking on into that. So before we do that, please do remember, though, to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And, of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee, and the YouTube thank you button, and, of course, the Pony Club down below as well. So, as always, guys, like I say, thank you very much. Please do remember to ring the bell as well. And, of course, on with this. Like I say, this comes from the Yorkshire Bylines with the title of Levelling Up Needs to be Exposed for the Sham It Is. And it exactly does. So, like I say, we're not going to go through all the article. I'm just going to skip down to here because this is the part we're talking about. Impact of cuts in Barnsley, South Yorkshire. We have had to bear the brunt. It is councils that have had to bear the brunt of austerity while being expected to continue not only the services that they were expected to provide, but at the same level with less resources and less staff. So, of course, there are going to be huge problems. But anyway, let's go on to this. So, Barnsley Council leader Sir Steve Houghton addresses this head on in a very recent Northern Agenda podcast. He reminded listeners to the extent at which is just fiddling while Rome burns. So, since the Conservatives came to power in 2010, over £14.5 billion, £14.5 billion has been cut from local government services, just over 1 million jobs shed. So councils are much smaller than they were 10 years ago, but are expected and asked to do the same things whilst bearing the brunt of the national economic problems. Any fat that was there has been cut, and a second round of austerity means that frontline services will go. And that is it. That is generally the case. Frontline services will go. And this, bear in mind, after sort of the pits closed, the council became a very big employer in this town. So losing some of these jobs is going to be devastating for the area. And we can only hope that there is enough other jobs in the local economy to be able to absorb that impact. So, but it continues saying, for Barnsley, it has meant losing 40% of its budget and about half its workforce. Steve Houghton said, if you look at Barnsley, you are losing 120 million a year for 10 years. That's 1.2 billion pounds. And a 20 million levelling up fund does not scratch the surface of what's been lost. If you look at it in the numbers, there is no comparison, says Houghton. In post-industrial towns like Barnsley, we have been levelling up for the past 20 years since we lost all the jobs in our staple industries. Levelling up is not a quick fix. It needs a 20-year strategy where we have a decent public services to underpin those communities. Then we start to grow the economy, give people skills, and have the right transport infrastructure. And he is right about transport infrastructure because there's one quote, statistic I always like to quote here. In South Yorkshire, 1 in 5 people turn down a job. So 1 in 5 people turn down a job because they cannot get there, because public transport in South Yorkshire is not good. And of course, this doesn't just include trains, it includes bus services as well. So privatization of the bus services has led to a very, very bad outcome for, unfortunately, a lot of people living in this area. So, oh, the irony. It was, after all, the Tories who came in and decimated South Yorkshire's industries in the 80s and 90s, upending the economic base and damaging the social fabric of our communities. Houghton has sat through it all, trying to navigate Barnsley through the worst of times. This is no tale of two cities because the best of times have seem to have escaped Barnsley in recent decades, but this tale is certainly Dickensian. So that is unfortunate reality for, you know, not only my hometown in Barnsley, but certainly a lot of other towns like that would certainly recognize what Steve Houghton is there saying about what's happened to their town. That you've had this massive amount of money slashed from council budgets, being unable to provide, you know, services at which they are expected to provide the same service of level without the staff or even the budget to do so. And trust me, Barnsley is fighting back desperately. Like I say, if you are from Barnsley and you don't know about the 2030 plan, go look it up. Because this is all Barnsley Council, and it's having, unfortunately, not a single penny put in from central government, from Westminster, to be able to support this plan. And that is infinitely depressing. Because I'll tell you what, Barnsley unfortunately voted quite significantly to leave the EU. If we were in the EU, do you know who would be supporting this? Because it still wouldn't be the central government, would be the EU. The EU would be putting money into this, saying, that's a fantastic plan, that can help develop your area, here's the money. Unfortunately, that does not happen from the UK central government, even though the Brexiteers who came to this town and proclaimed to every single member of people in this town. Remember, Nigel Farage was here. He toured several pubs. The UKIP and Brexit Party, very active. Even still, the remnants are still floating around, saying that, oh, Brexit was the best thing ever. Yeah, we could have got so much money from the EU to help develop Barnsley, especially with the 2030 plan. And none of this would have come from central government. But it was you guys in sort of the Barnsley UKIP and even the Barnsley Brexit Party who were saying, oh yeah, don't worry, Barnsley's not going to lose a single penny. And yet we have. And not only just because of Brexit, but massively because of austerity as well. And we said it before, a lot of councils really, really depended, especially during the austerity years, on that EU funding. And now, that tap has been, firmly shut off, unfortunately. And that is going to lead to, I think, as we've seen during the past couple of years, a lot of people really noticing that there's not a lot of stuff going on in their town anymore. And they're starting to realize, well, actually, a lot of that came from European funding. But as always, like I say, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, we'll see you all next time.